Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to take place in the 5th chapter in the book of Micah. The opening verse is distinctly negative, then it takes a distinctly sharply positive turn, but little known fact, the first verse is actually included in the original 4th chapter of the Hebrew Bible, and then after we see that leads to the prediction of the Messiah to be born, where he's going to be born, what he's going to do, then it kind of unfolds to the purification of the remnant. The remnant is a concept of the righteous minority. Only the remnant shall be saved. But we just want to briefly review what took place in the 4th chapter. The 4th chapter starts with a yet to be fulfilled. It's the distant future. We haven't even seen it yet, of the end times. And he writes, they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nathan shall not lift up swords against nation, neither shall teach battle anymore. So in this blessed future scenario, war and the instruments thereof are going to be obsolete, because there's going to be no reason, because everyone's going to be existing in wholeness and harmony and perfect peace and serenity, and even the lion will lay down with the lamb and without being afraid, we read of in Isaiah. But each one shall sit under his vine and his fig tree, with no one to make them afraid, for the mouth of Yahweh of hosts has spoken. So there's not going to be any reason to be afraid, because there's going to be no predators, no human predators, no animal predators. We can all sit in peace and bask in perfect harmony. And then he speaks of what was to him the future, but is to us the past, the return of Judah and Jerusalem from the exile of Babylon. And, he says, pain has gripped you like a woman in labor in verse 9. But the analogy of a woman in labor, that's the most excruciating physical pain analogy imaginable, but it's ultimately succeeded by the greatest joy experience. This is the juxt of passages such as John 16:21. We're going to open with the opening verse of the 5th chapter, which reads, Now you are raided, O daughter of raiders. A siege has been laid against us. They strike the judge of Israel with a rod on his cheek. This would be fulfilled during the reign of Zedekiah. He was the last monarch of the Davidic line to sit on the throne in Jerusalem, and while he was en route escaping the besieged city to Jericho, the Babylonians caught him and gouged his eyes out and slayed his children in front of them. So this the siege will be in midst when this happens, and it did happen some 150 years at least after Micah prophesied, because his prophetic ministry spans the range of the reigns of Jotham to Hezekiah, 750 BM before Messiah to 586 BM, and so the event, or 686, and the event of the conquest would take place exactly a century later. Now, he didn't ministry from the very start of that reign or to the tail end, so his ministry likely took place in the latter half of the 8th century BM. But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, who are little among the clans of Judah, out of you shall come forth to me the one to become ruler in Israel, and his comings forth are from old, from everlasting. Bethlehem is the birth town of David, the quintessential model monarch of the United Kingdom of Israel. Its ancient name was Ephrathah, and the Messiah promise, the proto-evangelism, that's what Genesis 3:15 is known as. That's the original declaration of the Savior to come. And so we learn that he's going to be born of a woman. He's going to be a human and not an angel, the Redeemer from sin. And then in Genesis 49:10, we read that he's going to come from the lion, the tribe of Judah, and he's also the lion from the tribe of Judah in Revelation 5:5. Then we also learn that he's going to come from the Davidic stock, the Davidic lineage, even though they're not going to be firmly seated on the throne for at least 500 years by the time he finally comes. That's in 2 Samuel 7. But here we learn with the specific location, it's going to be Bethlehem, the town in which David was born. And when the Roman Emperor Augustus demanded the tax, it forced everyone to their ancestral homeland to be levied for the tax. So that's why Joseph, the Messiah's stepfather, returned to Bethlehem at that occasion. and that's where he was born. But also we learn, remember, we already mentioned that he was going to be human from Genesis 3:15. Here we learn he's going to be born, so he's going to be mortal and temporal, but he's also going to be a divine. He's going to come from the distant past, the pre-existence and eternal one. His comings forth are from old, from everlasting. He was divinely sent and divinely he was divine. Let's just leave it at that. Therefore he shall give them up until the time that she who is in labor has given birth, and the remnant of his brothers return to the children of Israel. So remember the 9th verse of the preceding chapter, we read that word, the woman who is in labor, she who is in labor has given him birth. That would have been the virgin Mary, who would conceive children after him, but she was originally impregnated by the Ruach Kadesh, and this stoked a controversy because Joseph, her betrothed, soon-to-be husband, was contemplating divorce to put her away because, the town would think, hey, here's this woman who's pregnant, she hasn't been married yet, what are they going to think? But then he's assured through the angelic visitation that this is what needs to be done, keep marrying her and go through the wedding and bite the reproach. But the remnant, remember that concept is going to form the latter half of this chapter. The remnant is the righteous minority who will be saved. And he shall stand and shepherd in the strength of Yahweh, in the excellency of the name of Yahweh, his Elohim. And he shall dwell, for at that time he shall be great, to the ends of the earth. So he is our good shepherd, we read of in John's 10th chapter. And the shepherd, he protects the flock, he feeds the flock, he leads them to still waters and green pastures, and provides and protects in us. And the strength of Yahweh is his strength. We also read that term, the name of Yahweh, our Elohim, but we walk in the name of Yahweh, our Elohim, forever and ever, in the 5th verse of the 4th chapter. But they will dwell and be great. Their greatness will extend all the way across the earth, from the east to the west, to the north to the south. His greatness is without limit or end. And this shall be peace. When Assyria comes into our land, and when he treads in our palaces, we shall raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 leaders of men. So he is called the Prince of Peace by Isaiah in chapter 9:6 in the book which bears his name. And Assyria would have been their enemy at that time. Remember, Micah is writing in the tail end of the 8th century BM, and Assyria was the reigning contemporary dominant geopolitical entity which had swallowed the northern kingdom to the north, Samaria, in Israel, as predicted in Micah's 1st chapter, the 6th through 8th verses. So this prediction came true in his lifetime, but Assyria here just represents all of Israel's enemies. Assyria is extinct as a nation, but Israel is never without enemies. They are literally surrounded by enemies as we speak, all of whom to varying degrees refuse to recognize her diplomatically, and all of her desire to see her extinct or eliminated wholesale from the map. But, the shepherd is stronger than any of the enemies, and through him they will conquer and prevail and triumph. And they shall shepherd the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod at its entrances. And he shall deliver us from Assyria when he comes into our land, and when he treads within our borders. The land of Nimrod is the son of Cush, who is the son of Ham, who is the son of Noah. We meet him in the 10th chapter of Genesis. He is the one who established the cities of Babylon, which would eventually displace Assyria, but he also established the city of Assyria. So he was an empire builder of sorts, the mighty hunter, and this land would have been his, but the Messiah is going to deliver them from Assyria. That would have been all their enemies, remember, in this day, and he's going to be within our borders, and when he is in our borders, no weapon formed against us can prosper, no enemy aligned against us can prevail. And the remnant of Jacob shall be in the midst of many peoples, as dew from Yahweh, as showers on the grass, which do not wait for man, nor delay for the sons of man. So the remnant, once more, is the concept of the righteous minority of Jacob. That's Israel. The individual named Jacob he was born Jacob, but he was earned the name Israel, and that's what his nation, the 12 tribes of his 12 sons, would eventually become known to be called. But they're going to be in the midst of many people. They're not going to be a concentrated people after the diaspora. They're going to be spread all across the world, and they have their nation of Israel right now, but the majority of the world's 14 million Jews exist within nations, not their own. And the blessing, that is the Abrahamic promise, that they will be a blessing unto others, much as the showers on the grass is a blessing from heaven, which comes indiscriminately among the righteous and wicked alike, we read of in Matthew 5:45. And the remnant of Jacob shall be among the Gentiles, in the midst of many people, like a lion among the beasts of the forest, like a young lion among flocks of sheep, who if he passes through, shall both tread down and shall tear. There is no one to deliver. So the lion is the mightiest beast in nature. Proverb 30:30, he backs away not from any challenge. So he is brave and courageous. He will fight any enemy and win and triumph. It's not in the lion's nature to back down from any challenge, but to win and prevail. And that's what the remnant, the righteous remnant of Israel is going to be. While they are surrounded in the Gentiles, they will be as lions among men, among those who are not saved or belong to the chosen and covenant people. Let your hand be lifted up against your adversaries, and all your enemies be cut off. So a lot of people reject the notion that there are to be enemies in the Christian life, but this belittles the reality of our warfare. We have enemies, both temporal, human, and more importantly, principalities and the rulers of the dark ages. So there are invisible enemies and visible enemies, and the visible enemies are minions and props of the invisible enemy, the adversary. So we do have enemies, and we have to triumph over them. We have to confront them. We have to deal with them, and we will emerge victorious inasmuch as we abide in the power of his Spirit. And it shall be in that day, declares Yahweh, that I shall cut off your horses out of your midst, and I shall destroy your chariots. So what Yahweh deems will come to pass, you can bet your bottom dollar that it will come to pass. So if he says that he's going to destroy your chariots and your horses are going to be nowhere to be found, that means we have no right or reason not to expect that. Of course, he's referring to Israel's enemies at this future juncture. And I shall cut off the cities of your land, and I shall pull down all your strongholds. Again, he is stronger than any contraption or device of humanity or the world, any lion. There's no force in the universe that can measurably compare to the might and strength of Yahweh, who is omnipotent. That is the attribute of unlimited or infinite strength. So all these horses, all these cities, all these fortifications, all these castles are as nothing before him who created the entire universe and brought the cosmos into existence. And I shall cut off witchcrafts out of your hand, and let you have no magicians. Witchcraft and magic were forbidden practices in the ancient land of Israel. They were practices prolific among the surrounding nations and some of the aboriginal inhabitants in the Promised Land, the Canaanites. Which is there's a relationship between witchcraft and sorcery and drugs, and there's a magician is the use of illusion. It does not traffic in truth, and these are forbidden practices. We read these are among those who are commanded to get out, keep away from that. The stuff from Deuteronomy 10 through 12, that is forbidden practice. He says, get away from it, stay away from it, don't have anything to do with anyone, and don't have anything to do with it yourself. And I shall cut off your carved images and your pillars from your midst, so that you no longer bow down to the works of your hands. So idolatry is the representation, that is the physical likeness which represents a deity, and these deities have no metaphysical substance outside of the timber or gold or earthly material from which they are made, and they are the works of man's hands. Idolatry reverses the order. So we read that we are made in the image of Elohim. Idols are made in the image of man. They reflect his passions, his nature, his undisciplined appetites. They are basically cosmic bullies, unrestrained by any moral obligations. They are not moral role models, and they're going to be gone because the remnant has to be purified. And if the idols are in the midst of the remnant, then they can't be purified. The purification is the ultimate aim. The purification of the remnant is the ultimate aim of this passage. And I shall pluck your Asherim out of your midst, and I shall destroy your city. Asherim were the poles, I believe, that were represented of Baal worshiper. Baal was the storm deity and the fertility deity of one of the neighboring nations. And I shall take vengeance and wrath and rage on the Gentiles who did not obey. So the Gentiles at this, they have received the message of grace and salvation, but that does not exempt them from obeying. And so the Gentiles in the new dispensation can represent anyone who is outside the church, because the Gentiles are included and engrafted in the tree and the vine of Israel. So they are a chosen people as much as they belong. The Gentiles means not ethnic Gentiles, but it is a matter of belief. Those who do not share the faith, and those who do not share the faith will not obey, and they will receive the vengeance and wrath and rage and the righteous retribution of Yahweh for their disobedience. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Stay tuned until next time. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.